Additives, preservatives, and dyes have been in our food since the 1950s. Preservatives keep our meat from spoiling and make our frozen microwave dinners possible. Colors and dyes give texture and make our food look good enough to eat. Additives give and increases flavor. But are these added ingredients bad for our health? Many experts think so. Today we look into the world of one additive in particular. It plays hide and seek within your food and is so elusive that it goes by more than 40 names. The one that may be most familiar to you is monosodium glutamate, or better known as MSG.
Well, monosodium glutamate foods, or in short MSG, is a flavor enhancer that we, I guess, traditionally associated with Chinese restaurants. However, as our food supply has evolved over the last 40 years, MSG has become an added food, or a food additive to enhance flavor. So it is very perverse and throughout our processed foods that you see in the grocery stores today.
We get a taste for a certain flavor, salty, sweet, whatever you're craving that day. So you go and you get a taste of it, you get your bowl of ice cream, whatever it may be, and you go back for seconds. The second taste, the second bowl, the second serving never tastes as good, and yet we always go back for the second.
Canada, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, and the World Health Organization consider MSG safe. Since 1948, the amount of MSG added to foods has doubled every decade. However, hundreds of documented studies dating as far back as 1969 tell another tale and have disturbing results. The scientists' findings talk about allergies, brain lesions, obesity, neurological disorders, and many more ailments caused by elevated dosages of monosodium glutamate given to exposed laboratory animals like mice and monkeys.
What the big industry wants to look at is these individual studies of, you'd need a mass dose of it for it to affect, but very few are looking at what a long term. If a child has it when they're 5 years old, how are they going to be when they're 15 or 25, 50? And that's what's not being looked at.
Monosodium glutamate is in a wide variety of foods. It's in processed foods like soups and packaged casseroles, in gravies, stews, flavored packages of rice and noodles, and many processed meats. It's in salty snacks like potato chips, pretzels, and dips.
There's over 6,000 additives to our food system. And it's really picked up speed over the last 20 years. Therefore, in that change, we've gotten used to certain tastes. We've gotten used to certain price cost for our food as a general and a whole. So to change that would be devastating to the average person.
It was in 1908 that a Japanese scientist discovered and isolated the active ingredient glutamic acid in kombu, seaweed used to flavor broths and stews. During the Second World War, American military were surprised to find that Japanese rations tasted great compared to their tinny-tasting meals. After the war, MSG was introduced to the rise of the commercially prepared food industry and became used worldwide. Most fast food and chain restaurants use MSG. They serve pre-processed foods that they buy from restaurant supply companies.
Processed food, I imagine, was never meant to be food, or our food. All our food. It was meant to be, in some cases, when there is a storm and you cannot get out, or you say, gee, I'm going to get my can. This is how I see it. The problem is now processed food, which used to be for very exceptional thing. I'm going to go to the mountain and I'm going to take my can, or maybe the dry food would be more convenient. But exceptional situation, now it has become mainstream. That doesn't make any sense. But it's our fault. So the industry, if they have the right to sell it...
MSG only needs to be identified on product labels when it is added as an ingredient. It does not need to be mentioned when it is a byproduct of another process. The latter gives the consumer no indication that MSG is present and how much of it there is.
It's deceptive and deceitful. Absolutely. And if you knew everything you had to watch out for on a food label, it would be shocking, and people would be hours getting their shopping done because they'd be reading everything. We are so ill-informed as lay people going out to shop for food, as a health professional in my 50s, I see this way too often. I mean, the growth in some of these conditions amongst our kids has been, thousandfold increase in 40 years. That is ridiculous. Okay, so there's something that we're doing in our diet somewhere along the way, because you can't explain all this through genetics, because our bodies don't evolve that fast.
Many might be surprised to find MSG in baby formulas. Formulas contain high levels of processed milk and soy protein. The processing breaks down the proteins, releasing high levels of glutamate and aspartame. It wasn't until the 1970s that health authorities banned MSG from baby foods.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not very optimistic. If it goes the same way, I'm not optimistic at all, because convenience or whatever usually means that we are much more less, how do you say that? I don't like the word education, but we don't know our food very well anymore. There used to be a very intimate connection between the food and us. The food used to grow in our garden or close to a neighbor.
When I was a kid, I mean, we didn't go to the grocery store. The grocery store we went to was probably 2,500 square feet. Very, very small. Fruits, vegetables, meat. Had a little bit of spices and stuff like that, but we didn't see the sizes of these big supermarkets that we have today, which are probably 50,000 square feet, so they're about 20 times the size, and they sell everything. And once you go into start heading into the middle of a supermarket, and you see all the processed foods, we just don't eat the same, and that has some significant effects on body chemistry and brain chemistry.
We seem to have this thought process that if I can buy it from Sobeys or Superstore, it must be okay for me. Don't we think that most food within there is safe? But most foods are full of many toxins.
It is absolutely shameful in North America of what we're looking at in the way of dyes and all these things we're allowed to use in foods to preserve them, etc., and flavor enhance them. It's having a deleterious effect on our kids, and to some degree on the adults as well. I mean, if you go to Europe, they have much stronger rules on food. In Canada, we've got we've got 2,400 dyes we're allowed to use. Okay, they've got 9 in Europe.
So it's going to be a tough one in North America if all of a sudden we start saying, MS contains MSG. People aren't going to then be able to put it into a bigger picture. If we can highlight and make awareness for people to read for MSG, and that's definitely what I do in my classes when I talk about reading labels, is what those monosodium glutamate, what that means and how it's going to impact, in my particular practice, how it's going to impact their cardiovascular health.
For consumers to make themselves more knowledgeable of how to read a food label is of primary concern to be able to avoid MSG. So if you've got a kid that has either autism or maybe ADHD, being able to teach that person what to avoid on the list, and basically you got to stay outside of the outside walls of the grocery store.
The best way to avoid MSG is to buy fresh produce that are in season and organic foods. If you notice that it's taken longer than usual to complete your grocery list, don't be alarmed. It means that you are reading the label and looking out for the chameleon that works within food.